This is Martha Chapman, and I am back with some more good food for our eyes, for our ears, and for our souls. Have you ever had someone that just didn't like you and didn't have a valid reason? Have you ever had someone that mishandled you and didn't have a valid reason? Have you ever had someone that just obliviously didn't even acknowledge you and didn't have a valid reason? Well, I have a gentleman by the name of Mordecai who used to stand outside of the palace at the gate. And there was a worker inside of the palace by the name of Haman. And Haman just did not like Mordecai, because Haman expected every time that Mordecai saw him, he expected Mordecai to drop his head and tremble in intimidation, because Mordecai was at the gate and he was in the palace. Be careful of how you treat someone. Let me give you an example. Say, for example, someone asks you, do you mind going to work at the dessert table? And you don't mind going to work at the dessert table. And while you're working at the dessert table, there's someone in the atmosphere that don't like you working at the dessert table. There's someone in the atmosphere that don't want you there in general, but you're oblivious to how they feel. That's my example with Mordecai and Haman. Mordecai was oblivious to what Haman expected of him. So Haman goes home and he tells his wife and he tells his friends that he does not like Mordecai, this man that stands at the gate outside of the palace. Now the wife and the friends tell Haman to set up gallows that stand 75 feet to hang Mordecai. And Haman thought that was a good idea. Be careful of what you put out into the world. If you put out good, good will come back. If you put out hate, hate comes back. And sure enough, a boomerang does happen in this instance. So the king goes to sleep, but the king cannot rest comfortably on this particular evening. So he wakes up and he asks the attendant for the historical information that once took place in the palace. And as the king is reading through, he noticed an instance where Mordecai was responsible for saving a king's life, because two eunuchs had plotted to assassinate this king. But Mordecai found word. Mordecai heard about the plot, and Mordecai told who he needed to tell to save that king's life. So the king was impressed, and he asked the attendant, was Mordecai ever honored for such a great act? And the attendant responded, no, he never was. So they heard some noise and they peered out, and it was Haman walking in the castle, walking in the palace. So I'm going to read Esther Chapter 6, verses 6 through 10. What should I do to honor a man who truly pleases me? Now, this is the question that the king is asking Haman. And Haman, in his mind, he thinks the king is referring to him. So here's Haman's response. If the king wishes to honor someone, he should bring out one of the king's own royal robes, as well as the king's own horse with a royal emblem on his head. Instruct one of the king's most noble prince to dress the man in the king's robe and to lead him through the city square on the king's own horse. Have the prince shout as they go, "This is what happens to those the king wishes to honor." Excellent, the king said to Haman. Hurry and get the robe and my horse, and do just as you have said for Mordecai, for Mordecai, for Mordecai, who sits at the gate of the palace. Do not fail to carry out everything you have suggested. Boomerang. The devil thought he had a trap set, huh? The devil thought he had a trap set, huh? The devil thought he had a trap set, huh? The very man that Haman had went home and told his wife and told his friends, and he had plotted and wanted to kill Mordecai, is the very man that he has to go around and display and chant throughout the city and give honor to his good deeds. Be careful of what you put out into the world. If you put out good, good will come back. But if you put out bad, bad comes back. God's hand was on Mordecai. Mordecai was unaware of all of the evil that was transpiring around him. God saved Mordecai in the nick of time. God used the king in a mighty way. Because the very man that wanted to kill Mordecai is the very man that had to display Mordecai around the town and shout out loud honorable words to honor Mordecai's good deed. God does not forget our good. What Mordecai had done years ago had came back a full circle right in the nick of time. And that is how God works. In the nick of time, when the devil thinks he has you, when the devil has plotted bad, God will spin it for your good. And God will allow for good to prevail when it comes against his children. Mordecai was in good standing with God. God will not allow for the enemy to carry out evil when it's his child. And Mordecai was God's own. Be careful of how you walk, because God takes care of his children. So may this word remind you of a boomerang that happened, and it was not something that Haman saw coming. May this word remind you to always do the right thing, and the right thing will be in line with God's will for your life, for my life as well. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And until next time, keep shining.